Hello, everybody. This is Carol Maletta. Welcome to the Parenting 411 podcast, where we share information parents need from sources they can trust. I am so glad you're here for another episode of the Parenting 411 podcast. I know parents often feel overwhelmed with all that they have to do, holding everything together, making sure everyone has what they need and that everyone gets where they need to be. So how, they wonder, can they make time for teachable moments at home with their children? Today, we're going to talk about how overwhelmed parents can awaken their children's imaginations and make learning fun at home. With the pandemic and many schools operating virtually or with limited in-person instruction, parents got a real taste of this as they were tasked with ensuring their children were engaged in learning and reaching their academic goals for about 2 years. Now, with the world pretty much opened up, the responsibility for overseeing formal learning has pretty much shifted back to school. Still, children need enrichment and learning opportunities outside of the classroom. We have a special guest with us today, Keisha Nelson, Educational and Outreach Manager for the TV station of a prominent university. She is here to share her expertise and provide tips on how to make learning an exciting experience for both children and parents alike. Keisha B. Nelson is a committed, driven, and passionate educator and media arts specialist whose professional experiences include teaching, student advocacy, community engagement, content creation, and entrepreneurship. Her passion for education and community engagement drives her to develop strategy, build strong partnerships, and serve her community. Keisha is a champion for justice and leads with a lens of equity and inclusion. Her commitment to change drives her strategic, results-driven work ethic. So join us now as we delve into this important conversation and discover how to awaken your child's imagination and make learning a fun and engaging experience. Welcome, Keisha.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Carol. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, it's my pleasure. And let's dive in. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So first of all, as I mentioned, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you about all things parenting and education. As you noted, I am Keisha Nelson. I have had the pleasure of um, growing up in the South Jersey area. I always tell folks that Philly is my city, and I grew up in South Jersey, not far, just across the bridge. And I actually went to Howard University and studied education there, and then continued my education at the University of Pennsylvania, where I received my master's in reading, writing, and literacy. I thought that I was going to be on the path toward becoming a reading specialist. And then as I was doing my field research and student teaching, I realized that that wasn't necessarily my path. I was trying at that time, I was really trying to find, like, where can I just support family? At that time, I felt really academically and personally and professionally connected to the achievement gap and the opportunity gap, in noticing that there were major disparities between Black and Brown youth and their and white and Asian counterparts in terms of academic achievement. And so, of course, that drove me to wanting, that was my personal problem that I took on, that I really wanted to support with solving.
Right.
And so I thought it was in the classroom. And then I guess I started to just chase the disparity. I'm like, well, if the classroom is not the root of the issue, maybe I can work with families. And so that drove me to working in nonprofits. And then, it drove me back to the school to support around the periphery of their education as a student advocate. And so with all of that classroom experience and, all of that sort of, chasing, I think what I found was that, we always solve problems from where we are. And so
Mm,
sometimes that looks like, you have to dig deep and do some soul searching about where are your gifts, where are your talents, and just, do the good work from that point. And
mm-hmm.
I could not overlook my passion for TV, my passion for education and entertainment. And so I wanted to find a space where I could merge the two, what I call edutainment. I wanted to be
Mm-hmm.
able
Mm-hmm.
to do a little bit of educating, and entertaining. And so
Right.
that's how I landed in this educational role at a television station.
Yes. And I like what you said about just starting where you are, because I think that a lot of us will look at a problem that we might see in society and feel like, well, even if I did jump in there, I'm only going to help, 3 people or 10 people. But what about the ones that are all across the country that need this? So I'm not going to bother. So I like that, because it's really about operating in your gifts and making a change in your corner of the world. And then, who knows what'll spin off from that, because other people who have similar gifts will see what you're doing and they'll hop in, and then it becomes a movement. So I like what you said, and just how you really were determined to find your space. You decided some places you didn't fit, you didn't quite fulfill you. And then it seems like you have definitely found it. And edutainment, I do agree, is definitely your space. We already knew each other from before, when I spoke or for an organization. But I was just so impressed, because I had started following you, and when at the start of the pandemic, how you just jumped right on. Social media with your children, with all of these fun lessons, and they were well thought out, they were fun, and just your spirit was just contagious. So I wanted to know what Auntie Keish was going to do next. It's almost the way that previous generations couldn't wait to see Sesame Street, or couldn't
Yeah.
wait to see Mr. Rogers. So why don't you talk about how that came about?
Thank you. I mean, it was so much fun, when the world shut down, and it's still crazy to lead conversations with that because it feels kind of surreal. But when the world shut down, and I think, when the 2 weeks that we were promised would be, just but a vacation, or but like a snowstorm, when that time passed and we realized that we were kind of in it for the long haul, I had been talking to some girlfriends and who also had preschool students who, some schools were getting back together virtually or doing some things here or there. They had given, their families resources, but my son at the time was 3 and our daughter was just not even a year.
Hmm.
We didn't have resources.
Hmm.
Our preschool gave us, a packet and some apps that we could download. And it was kind of like that was that, right? And so I started, with put my educator hat on, which really it never comes off. And we were doing circle times at home with just my son and then in talking to some girlfriends, they're like, I don't know, what we're going to do. I have, no resources, or like I have to work, now we're transitioning working virtually and it's just a lot. So at that time, I started with just a FaceTime, and it
Hmm.
was a FaceTime with our son's name is CJ, with CJ and some of our close friends.
Uh-huh.
And then I was getting more feedback from other girlfriends. And I say, you know what? Maybe we could just do this on Instagram Live. Maybe we
Hmm.
could just, do something. And in my mind, I was thinking, we'll just keep it light. We'll make it maybe like a story time
Hmm.
and a little bit of learning. And then that turned into, circle time with Auntie Keish, where
Hmm.
we explored lots of different themes. I was just imagining the things that our little ones were missing out on, like
Hmm.
Spirit Week. So we had
Mm.
Spirit Week with Auntie Keich, you know?
Mhm.
And we
Uh-huh.
had different dedicated days, and our little ones were really excited to wear college paraphernalia day
Mhm.
and their
Mhm.
favorite sports teams. And so, I think that in the spirit of community,
Mhm.
and bringing us all together, I think that I felt that it was really necessary for us to have a way to connect, and
Mhm.
engage where I could talk back.
Mhm.
We would have it set up in our daughter's room. It was a really, spontaneous, but we were trying to just pull it together of our set design. We had a board, we
Yes.
did props. And it really gave a lot of interactive opportunities for littles to feel seen, in that
Mhm.
space. I'd call out their names, I'd say good morning, we
Uh-huh.
work together, and really just, as I mentioned, in the spirit of community, just sharing. Um, and I think that that's something that's really, really important to me personally. And so it was great. And that
Mhm.
even led to feeling inspired once we realized that our kids weren't going back to school. Once again, my son would have been in pre-K 4. We didn't have any options for him. And so
Mhm.
I was imagining the host of others who were trying to take on the awesome task of preparing your child for school. School readiness is a huge hot topic amongst early childhood educators.
Mhm.
And I felt that that task could be daunting, but didn't have to be. So we created a curriculum that, families could follow and journey, in educating their young folks around, school readiness. So
Mhm. Mhm.
that was awesome. It was a great experience.
Well, I'd love to see that really on TV. I mean, it really more. I don't know if you have aspirations for that, but
Yes.
I would love to see that come back. And then I also hope, I don't know, maybe you already do this, but I think you'd be excellent to help parents prepare their children for, kindergarten and school success in general. I mean, in terms
Thank
of
you.
as a consultant or something, but we'll be right back after this. You love your kids. You do your very best for them. But sometimes it feels like it's just not enough. And you're so sure you're the only one who feels this way. The truth is, you're not alone. It is also true that there are some things you're doing quite right. And there's a community who would love to exchange ideas with you. I'm Carol Maletta, creator of the Parenting 411, a portal for parents where I share information parents need through webinars and masterclasses. And not only that, the parents there support each other on this amazing journey in the Parenting 411 community group on Facebook. I can't wait to meet you in the community. And we're back with the Parenting 411. Now, I know that one thing that parents worried about a lot of time during the pandemic, and it was already a problem before, but that was too much time on devices,
Mhm.
and all of that. And that definitely escalated, I believe, during the pandemic.
Mhm.
So, what are your thoughts on that? And what are some tips that you could give parents for moderating that technology use?
Yeah, it's such a difficult conversation to have because I always say parenting is the great equalizer. It's no
Mhm.
one came with a handbook. It doesn't matter how much money you have, how much education you have. When the doctor sends you home with your child, it feels the same for everyone. And so we're all working together to try to just figure things out. And I definitely think technology and screen time are one of those things that we're all just trying to figure out. And so I'll even say for our home, we have a roller coaster relationship with screen time. We love it, we hate it, we're up, we're down. But the reality is, this is not a new conversation because, as you mentioned, Mr. Rogers, who was, a champion for screen time when televisions became hot in homes. And a
Mhm.
lot of parents were worried about the distance that it would create between a child and the real world, right? And so
Mhm.
once we figured out that it's not necessarily whether or not you're watching, it's what you're watching, right?
Yes.
And
Mhm.
so we can say the same, and it's what we are saying the same. Sending the same message when it comes to screen time.
Mhm.
Screen time is, and technology, especially in this day and age, I actually look at it as critically important for our young people who are in a digital first society where it almost feels like we're robbing them of an important skill set,
Mhm.
rather than looking at it as a potential threat. What we should look at it maybe is as an
Mhm.
opportunity for them to master, which, as these little ones, they are very clearly the digital first generation because they have no problem knowing how to do anything that has to do with touch screens and those. But it is another literacy. And I think that
Yes.
that's an important perspective for us to have. And also, for us to understand that as adults, 40% of us are picking up our phones at least 50 times a day. Research is showing us, that we are very connected to our digital devices and we're sticking them in our babies' faces, right? We're recording
Mhm.
them, we're taking pictures of them, we're having them FaceTime their loved ones. And that is good screen time, right? That is good screen
Sure.
time. And there are other, games and apps that are also identified as positive screen time. And that's not to say that we shouldn't have balance. That's not to say
Mhm.
that we shouldn't be monitoring. But I
Mhm.
think that it could be a potential opportunity to bring parents and caregivers into the room, right? Into the
Mhm.
spaces that is not to be looked at as just a here you go and go ahead and be quiet or do whatever you're doing so I can go do my thing. But and sometimes it may be that, right? Because it
Mhm.
is good to hold their attention, but at the same time I think it's equally as important for us to be involved in that experience and to
Mhm.
see what are you playing, and what are you doing, and to control that, right? And I think that
Mhm.
that is important as parents, that we can say, these are trusted, experiences, and these
Mhm.
are what you're permitted to use, these are what you're permitted to play with.
Mhm.
The digital devices have a great opportunity to educate our young folks in ways much quicker than
Mhm.
maybe sitting down with a paper and pencil can. And so
Mhm.
are we talking about academic apps, are we talking about games that are intriguing their critical thinking or building their computational thinking skills? I'm
Mhm.
all for it. I think that
Right.
that's great and important. But as I mentioned, I think it's more about the content. And I
Mhm.
think that that's what we should be monitoring, rather than being stuck at the conversation of whether or not children should have screen time.
Mhm. And I like what you said about it being another literacy.
Mhm.
Literally. That's what parents really need to think about, and often when I talk to parents about it as well, I tell them, it's technology is a tool. It can be a toy, for
Mhm.
entertainment, and that's okay, with moderation, but don't allow it to be a tyrant. Like, you take
Absolutely.
control, you set the boundaries in terms of how technology is gonna come into your life, and I think
Absolutely. Yeah,
Mhm,
I completely agree with you. And I think to that point, I think it's important in as much as we have expectations from schools and educational agencies to introduce STEAM to our children, that we're
mm,
understanding that that is a part of it. We can't expect our children to become a robotics scientist or engineer and not think that the foundation of that is utilizing a digital device.
mhm,
So
mhm.
many jobs now require and have expectations around mastery of digital literacy. And so I absolutely think that's super super important. It's critical, even
Mhm,
especially with our
mhm.
Black and brown kids. Please let them learn these computers and all of the things that they have to offer. Super important.
Right, right. And and for parents that shy away from it or just don't know what to do with it, it really is another playground too. And so we certainly have set boundaries for them on the playground in the real world, so to speak, where they can go, all of the things that you said, what they can do, what they can play with, who they can speak to, and all of that. We just do that as well
I
in
love
the
that.
digital world.
Yes, I think that's a great way to look at it. It's another playground. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, so for parents that again just wonder, how do I get started? Like I don't have an educational background, I'm not good at math, science, or whatever, or they just don't think they're a fun mom or fun personality. How can they get started? Now you can. I'm not going to even deny that I didn't throw some of my stuff in there, but anyway. So how do they get started?
I think honestly, I think we should take the pressure off, right, of ourselves. I think that's probably the first place to start. Is
Hmm.
like we said, there's so much that we hear about as parents in terms of what we should do, and that can
Hmm.
build up a sense of pressure. I know, even for me, I feel like we just carry a lot of pressure as parents, and more specifically, moms.
Hmm.
We have a lot on our plates and a lot on us when it comes to approaching our kids and what's best for them.
Hmm.
So I always would encourage folks to start with, take a deep breath and relieve some of that pressure to have an expectation for how we're going to engage with our kids, right?
Hmm.
And then once we take that pressure off and we remind ourselves that at our very core, we want to connect with our children. We want to grow with our children. And I'm really being intentional about the language of with,
Hmm.
because I know that it's really, really difficult to parent, especially when we have a lot of other things on our plates.
Hmm.
But I do encourage us all to start with the idea of with. And I
Mm.
think when we start with the idea of with and not necessarily for, or, what can I put my child in? What activity
Mm.
can I have them in? What new book can I buy for them? Or what new app or game or, camp or whatever? Let's think about what we can do with them.
I like that.
Because for me, I think about, our core memories when we think back to when we were children, and I
Hmm.
and I would imagine that some of the ones that stick out as being most memorable are the ones that we made with our parents in terms of
Hmm.
bonding and connection. And I mean, I am always leading when it comes to our family with the idea of making memories, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so there's so much learning that happens when we're doing things together. There's so much
Hmm.
learning about values. You
Hmm.
may not feel strong in math or feel strong in a specific subject, but you definitely know what you know, right? And you know
Hmm.
what you believe, and some of the core values that you want your child to walk away with. And that
Hmm.
happens when we're doing things together.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
we always talk about how it's not necessarily about what you say, but what you do when it comes to, our young people and how they're growing up with us, and we are their models and they are watching us. And yes, that is important. And but bringing the two together and bridging that gap and thinking about with is what I would like to, encourage us to lead. That looks like playing together. That looks like
Hmm.
eating at the dinner table together. So much can be shared from us.
Hmm.
And teachers, educators, we will look at that. We will observe that and say, oh, look, that's social emotional learning. Oh, you
Hmm.
took them to the bank, or you brought them in with you on this, some kind of financial decision, whether it's at the store. Mommy, why are
Hmm.
you using this card? Or how are you using your phone to pay for your meal? Use it Apple
Hmm.
Pay or whatever,
Hmm.
different kinds of things. There's learning happening when we
Hmm.
just bring them into our worlds together. We
Hmm.
will look at that and say, wow, that's financial literacy. Letting your child know why we are not buying this thing, or going to the grocery store, and why we have a list oh, that's helping us understand that, we need to organize our tasks together. We're
Mm-hmm.
following a recipe together. That's
Mm-hmm.
step-by-step instructions. That's computational thinking. We are all able to say and identify like certain educational terms that would apply to those kinds of daily routines, but
Mm-hmm.
bringing our young folks into what we're doing and having it be a together experience, a memory making experience. I think that's the best place to start.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I mean, learning together and I love, thinking about doing learning with as
Mhm.
opposed to teaching them this or making them do that. And that alone really, once you kind of wade into that experience, then you start to see that, yeah, you know math, science,
Exactly.
you
Exactly.
are a cool mom. I mean,
Yeah.
I definitely found that to be the case for me. Like I remember when the doctor said, we're having twins, of course, but that they were both boys. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, okay, I know nothing. I know nothing about boys. At
Yeah.
least I was a little girl.
Right.
But once I leaned into it, I became quite fun with them and
Mhm, mhm.
funny and all of that. So you just start small
Yeah.
and then get in there. So I like that you reinforce that. I wish I had thought about that earlier,
And
took a
you know
little.
what? And that's also why I said to relieve some of the pressure, because as parents, and I feel like the way that we kind of grew, we thought that there was sort of this, our parents knew all, that they
Yes,
just had this sense of understanding and knowing. And I think we do our kids a disservice when we position ourselves as parents and ourselves as adults as having reached this monumental place of just knowing everything, right? Because then
right.
we set our kids up to think that when they become an adult or when they become a parent, that they're going to know everything. And then they start to think something's wrong with them, when they
Mhm,
don't. So the reality is it's so much better, and we're preparing our children better when we regulate their expectations to say, listen, mommy does not know everything. But guess what? We will find out together. Let's go
uh-huh,
find out the answer together. And then we will both be brighter for it. Let's
yes.
go Google, and that's another teachable moment, but we know that we know how to find the answer. Even if I
Mhm,
don't know it, we know how to find it. And here's how we research, or here's how we find the answer to that question. I think
mhm.
that's so, so important. Yeah.
Well, that can lead us into, the summer slide. Like
Yeah.
what, from your point of view, go ahead and describe it for some parents that may not be familiar with this, particularly maybe
Absolutely.
parents of younger children. Talk about what it is, and then some ideas, that parents can do to help mitigate that
Yeah.
for their children.
Yeah, the summer slide or summer learning loss, or there are lots of different terms, but typically, what we notice, and we might as parents have experienced it ourselves growing up, is that gap, that June to September gap in learning, in consistent classroom, learning. Some kind of fogginess happens there where all of the things, or some of the things, some of the really important things that we learned in that previous grade gets forgotten because sometimes we're not engaging, we're not working. It's similar to when we work out and we're doing really great and we can run that mile, and then we stop running every single day and we take a 2 or 3 month break, and then we try to go back to running that mile, and we're like, whoa, I used to be able to do this easily. What's going on? Now
Mhm.
it's a struggle. My muscles have forgotten how to run this mile, right? And very similarly, the muscles in our brain and those kinds of the functionings, if they're not engaged
Mhm.
throughout the summer, it is very easy, and we've noticed this in research, that youth are forgetting important concepts throughout the summer, which is why now many programs have become available to support kids and families. And even schools have offered a summer enrichment program. They have
Mhm.
offered, various academic opportunities for families to engage with their littles in order to make sure they're staying fresh and keeping even just the muscle of waking up early and
Mhm.
diving into some work. And so, in terms of transitioning into some ideas or resources for that,
Mhm.
something that we do at home, which is small but impactful, is
Mhm.
we do our morning work. And so, during the summer, I purchase from, the Dollar Tree. I'm not talking about going out and grabbing this huge, big, bulky, expensive curriculum that we don't know how to utilize. I'm talking about going to the Dollar Tree or going to a dollar store or to, a store that has some academic books. Get a book and have them do one page in the morning before
Mhm.
breakfast, while you're fixing breakfast, or in the car while you're on your way to camp or on your way to wherever we're going in the morning,
Mhm.
and give them that regular 20 minutes of learning, of reviewing. And what I like to do too is I like to peek. I say I'll look back and peek ahead. So what
Mhm.
I'm always doing is I'm Googling, like, what are some core concepts from first grade. My son is in first grade. What are some core concepts from first grade? And what are some core concepts happening in second grade? And
Okay.
let's merge those and let's bring them into the summer experience. And
Mhm.
sometimes, like I mentioned, there's morning work that we can do, but also, something that we have the ability with a little bit more flexible scheduling in the summertime, we can apply those learnings. So
Mhm.
we can think about ways in which we can take the things that they learned in first grade and now we can bring them into real world experiences. What are
Mhm.
we doing? We're, like we mentioned, baking and following recipes. That's a core concept of understanding measurement, right? So we're
Mhm.
bringing measurement. We're introducing that idea. We're going to make our first grader the timekeeper of the family. He or
Mhm.
she must wear a watch. They can go. We can make a fun deal out of it. Go to somewhere, buy a nice watch that's themed with their favorite character on it, and they are the timekeeper for the family to make sure that we are always on time. Maybe we are working on lists and remembering and understanding how important it is to have orders. And so we'll make our student, and what I'm saying with these examples is how we can incorporate
Mhm.
some of the learning that they've had into the
Mhm.
fabric of our day in a
Mhm.
way that doesn't feel stuffy. It doesn't feel long. It doesn't feel like summer school, but it feels like now we are applying and showing the relevance and the need for this education throughout the summertime. And as
Mhm.
we would probably and should probably and could probably already be bringing it into the fabric of our day, during the school year as well. And the last thing, of course, is probably the most obvious thing, but finding a program that
Mhm.
integrates some of the educational components into the fun of camp and those kinds of things as well. But I
Mhm.
think we'd be surprised, and I actually should say this, the actual last thing would be making sure we are
Oh
reading
gosh. Mhm.
with, reading with. Go to the library, pick out some of their favorite books, and find a fun hour or time. And I don't literally mean hour, but for us,
Mhm.
sometimes it becomes an hour. But find a sweet
Mhm.
spot topic that
Mhm.
you can dive in on and read with your kids. It's
Mhm.
fun. I just finished Diary of a Wimpy Kid with our son,
Oh gosh,
and
yes.
it was oh, the boys, they like that kind of stuff. They think it's
Mhm.
this, they want to be nasty and silly and all those silly kind of things. We can be silly, y'all. We can laugh
Mhm.
with them and joke
Mhm.
with them. It's okay. And
Mhm.
it goes back to what I mentioned before about core memories. It'll
Mhm.
be a fun thing. I can't wait for my son to get to your son's age, Carol, and say, Mom, I'm so happy. One memory. Remember that summer when we read Diary of a Wimpy Kid? We read the whole series or whatever. And what I
Mhm.
mentioned is, my son was so excited. This is
Mhm.
the same boy. He's an excellent reader, but he thinks
Mhm.
he doesn't like to read. He thinks he doesn't
Mm.
like to read. And I said, that's finally, you love to read. It's the
Mhm.
content, you just need to pick out the book that you want to read. And
Mhm.
he
Mhm.
loved it. And it was such a great experience asking me every night, can we read tonight? Can we read tonight? And it got me excited, that we
Mhm.
could bond and connect together over reading. So I definitely will say those tips as being sort of a part. So I would say find a book that a workbook that can be incorporated into morning work or whatever time of day works best for you. Um,
Mhm.
I'd say incorporating, looking back into that curriculum and taking a sneak peek ahead and incorporating those concepts into your daily life, of course. Looking at the applied learning, where can we go, what can we do, and finding programs that will embed learning and education into the fun summer
Mm.
camp experience that they're going to have. And of course, reading with your child. I'm going to say every day because I want to set the bar high. It may not be every
Yes.
day, but please, let's try to make it every day, even if
Yes.
it's 20 minutes. And don't think of literacy in one way. Everyday literacy is reading signs, we're reading maps, we're reading newspapers, we are doing lots of reading. We're reading online all the time.
Mhm.
But I always encourage going to the library, letting them have agency, letting them go pick out whatever books you want. Yes, yes,
Mhm.
yes. The answer is yes. And let them bring them home, and read together.
We'll be right back after this. As the saying goes, mother's work is never done, except when it really is. I'm talking about my new book, Mother's Work: Pearls of Wisdom and Gems from My Journey. I share my transformation from an outmanned, overwhelmed mom of twin boys to a parenting strategist and consultant, and being honored as DC Mother of the Year by American Mothers Incorporated. In Mother's Work, I tell you about the 7 guideposts that kept me anchored as I weathered the peaks and valleys of motherhood. Grab your copy at carolmaletta.com/motherswork. And we're back with the Parenting 411. A couple of things that you talked about. Obviously, the Diary of a Wimpy Kid definitely brought back memories because that's when my children were middle school or tail end of elementary school. That's when they came out, and it
Yeah.
was just so funny. And actually, it's funny how the author said it. He really wasn't writing it for kids at first.
Wow.
it's but it's just taken off. So I love that. But then the other thing you said, and I think it's really important, a little thing about the watch,
Yeah.
about teaching children how to tell time and not digital, not
Right.
that digital
Nope.
time. Because it's funny that one of the hosts of on one of the morning talk shows, he posted on Instagram his children. I don't know, they looked like they were late elementary school, something like
Mhm.
that. But he had a watch.
Mhm.
Sorry, he had a clock, a wall clock there, analog, I guess.
Mhm.
And they were, what is that, what do you
Wow.
do with that? And they're smart kids, but it's
Yeah.
just that they hadn't had to do that, and that is a skill that
Absolutely.
children need.
Absolutely. And I mean, and Carol, like that is really, really important. Telling time. Not everywhere we will not find digital clocks everywhere. But even when we do find digital clocks, can our children learn how to count by fives? Can they do the math of quarter
Yes.
after and
Yes.
quarter till? Can we look at that as a skill beyond the convenience of digital clocks
Right.
and look into it and say that there is much more that can be learned and needs to be learned in reading and telling time than to because multiplication happens when we know how to read clocks. We know our 5 times tables if we know
Mm-hmm.
how to read clocks, if anything,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
being able to tell time and the concept of time is something but that looking at that second hand can really help us to understand the concept of 1 minute and not to say we can't set our timers or devices, but still there's something very different about understanding time. That's
Yes,
you
I
know
agree. It's that visual passage of time.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. The visual passage of time. Absolutely. And that speaks to a specific learning type, to be able
Yes,
to understand for visual learners, to be able to see what a full hour might look like. And even going into fractions. I mean, Carol, we could talk all day
I
about
know.
how telling time is a gateway into many more skills. So yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
absolutely.
So, I wanna talk about something that you mentioned a little bit earlier, but really expand on it because I know it's important to you, and that is really helping moms find community, both
Mm.
for themselves and for the benefit of their children. So talk about that, well, how you feel about that, and the kinds of things you've done to build community.
Yeah. Well, they have a saying that says, ain't no hood like motherhood, right?
Uh-huh,
And
uh-huh.
so, and that is really to say that motherhood, in my opinion, is not a journey that is meant to be walked alone. It
Mm.
is too heavy of a journey to walk alone, and it is too dense and too long and too many other things to walk alone.
Mhm.
And I mean, I am a champion for ladies, for moms, and of course, dads and caregivers and all of the different relationships, but particularly speaking from a mother's perspective. Moms need moms. Moms
Mm.
need tribes of women who can walk this journey together, not just for the resources of, and which school does your kid go to and which camp should I put them in, and because those things are important, but
Mhm.
also for the times when we need to let our hair down, when
Mhm.
we're, as I'm saying, like take our bras off, and we
Mhm.
can literally take away from, it's not about the competition. It's not about the fad that can sometimes be, motherhood, which
Mhm.
is fine, but it's also about having someone for this journey, because the reality, and Carol, I can't imagine you with a set of twin boys, but
Mhm.
that was not an easy lift. There were, I'm sure, times when you might have felt like you wanted to pull your hair out, and who do
Mhm.
we go to, but someone else that might be able to understand that journey. And so
Mhm.
I am 100% a huge advocate for moms, finding moms where your
Mhm.
values align, and where
Mhm.
it's a trusted space where you
Mhm.
can connect, where you can breathe, woosah, where you can have your self-care times together, where you can joke.
Mhm.
And for me, sometimes I look at it as like my mom tribe, my mom group is sometimes it's the only space sometimes where I feel like they will care about this thing.
Mhm.
Sat on the toilet today and was accident free, like, I mean, it's those kinds of things because you're in it and it's so
Mhm.
intimate.
Mhm.
And so to the idea of, you know, just how lonely it can be to be a mom or to be the only mom, even in your friend group, that can be
Mhm.
difficult. And so I
Mhm.
think, like, we are worth um, seeking out and doing our due diligence in finding
Mhm.
those tribe members who we can be honest about this journey with. Because sometimes folks that don't have kids yet, they just look at it as, oh, that's so cute, you're a mom, and you may not necessarily feel comfortable, sharing, I'm tired, I'm,
Mhm. Mhm.
this is a lot. So
Mhm.
to find that, and I mean, I would recommend folks start with the spaces that their little ones are already at school, if
Mhm.
they're going to school, the extracurricular activities, finding, their kids' parents, their kids' friends, the parents of their kids' friends, to see if there's
Mhm.
connection there, reconnecting with friends who already have kids. But there are a
Mhm.
slew of organizations. And so, I mean, I, would encourage folks to find an organization, a mom focused organization to join and find connection in. Even your church, the youth
Mhm.
ministry or youth and family ministry, being connected. Social media has a whole bunch of virtual and digital tribes now, which I love that we've utilized social media to our advantage to find community. And so there are so many tribes that folks can participate in that have your exact niche. You know, I feel like on social media, you can literally find Black moms who have twins, you know, like boys, you know, it's like everything more specific with social media because everybody is creating a tribe for their niche, and I love that.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
super super important. And if you don't have one, start one. You know,
Mhm.
find value in your voice, and because it is that important, we deserve it. We are worth having a tribe. We are worth not holding all of this in. We are
Mhm.
worth finding a space that we can be transparent and honest and finding our kind of people, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we are worth
Mhm. So, what's next for you? Anything exciting professionally or personally as we look ahead to summer and beyond?
yeah. Well, summertime, let me just say, Carol, I'm looking forward to resting. I am looking forward to resting and doing the things that I shared with you about ideas for what parents can do. I am so looking forward to making memories with my kids. I'm looking forward to, you know, ensuring that they have a lot of exposure, which I feel is super important. Exposure to museums, exposure to, you know, college campuses. I work at a university, so I like to bring them up to the college when school's out and get a chance to run around and see themselves in that space.
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to resting and making memories with my husband and kids. And, you know, that's something that's on the top of my list. Now,
Mhm.
additionally, we have lots of things happening. I'm really, really excited for this big project at work called Vet for a Day because
Mm.
something that's really important to me is that young people have exposure to careers and see themselves in various career fields. And so we're hosting two veterinarians who have
Mm.
their own television show, and
Mm.
they are going to come up and give all of the information about what it means to have a career in the field of veterinary science. That's something for our
That's
teens
exciting.
in the DMV area. It's very, very exciting. And I'm encouraging everyone who knows someone between the ages of 12 and 15 to bring them out to that event because it's going to be, I think, super impactful and very hands on, which you know that is something important to me.
Mhm.
Additionally, we're in the DMV area. So one of the biggest attractions is the National Harbor, which is
Mhm.
in Oxon Hill, Maryland. And so we'll be there every other Tuesday doing
Mm.
some fun watch and play experiences where
Wow.
parents can watch an episode of one of our shows and then play with a community-based organization that specializes in that theme for the week. So excuse me, I'm really, really excited for those kinds of
Wow.
things. Lots of fun things happening, and we're really trying to get all ages. So we're trying to get the young ones with the watch and play, and we're trying to hit the teens with the Vet for a Day program. So make sure everyone you all stay connected because we got some fun things happening.
Well, speaking of connection, tell everybody how they can follow you on social media or, a website if you have that too.
Yeah, so just you can follow me at Keishology, which is like the study. So the ology, Keish, KeishOlogy, Keishology. You can
Mhm.
find me there. I am very open and transparent about what's happening and what's going on and all the fun ways that you can get involved. And I try every now and then to drop in a few nuggets, a few gems
Mhm.
along the way.
Well, please send me to anything you have about the
Absolutely.
Vet for a Day. Well, either one, both of the activities, but Vet for a Day as well, so that I can put that out there. Because, in fact, I know some young people that are interested in being veterinarians. So I certainly
Good.
want to make sure that they see it as well. So I will help you promote that. So, yeah, but thank you so much for joining me today. I really, really enjoyed our conversation. And to our listeners, I hope you caught the nuggets that she shared. And please do follow her on social media. She said it's at Keishology. That's on Instagram. I highly recommend that you follow. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Again, we love having you at the Parenting 411 podcast. Thank you, Keisha, for joining us. And as always, follow the Parenting 411 on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And also, I want you to head on over to www.carolmaletta.com/VIP2. Not only can you join our VIP list, but you can also grab a copy of my tips for electronics and social media with kids. So enjoy the rest of your week. And as always, remember that it's never too late to be the parent that you want to be.